All right, you should be able to see my screen now. So yes, we are going to be looking at the Keynotes tool today. This is a weekly webinar that we run where we look at frequently asked questions about the CI tools, or we do introductions to tools, or more in-depth tools, discussions on certain topics or certain workflows. This week we are going to be looking at the Keynotes tool, starting from the point of view of someone who has maybe heard the name Keynotes, but that's all. So we're going to talk about why it might be useful and how you can get up and running using it. Everything I'm going to be doing is in 27 today, but we're just going to be covering off mostly the basics. So I don't think we'll see anything that is specific to 27 here. So if you're using an older ArchiCAD version, don't need to worry. Everything that you'll see today should work in whatever version you have, as long as it's in the last 4 versions or so. If you have heard of the tools, or as a result of watching this video you want to try out some of the tools, you can always go and grab a trial version of any of the CI tools. Just head to myci.centralinnovation.com/free trial and you can sign up for a trial version there and get started using the tools for 30 days. One final thing before we start as well, if you have any questions as we go along, I will be checking for questions every 10 minutes or so. So if you send something through, I will see that eventually and I'll either answer it while we're live, or I'll use it as the basis for a future webinar, or I'll just create a support ticket for you depending on what they are. So if you have any questions at all about Keynotes, about this webinar, or just about the CI tools in general, send those through, and if I can answer them live I will, and if I can't then we'll cover them some other way. Alright, so let's get into it. So the Keynotes tool, first of all, why does the Keynotes tool exist? The main reason that the Keynotes tool exists is to do a thing that you're probably already doing in some way in ArchiCAD, but to do it in a less annoying way, let's say. So it will remove some of the annoying work from your workflow, and also because it will be doing some of that part of the job for you, it would reduce your maybe your anxiety level when you're around issuing documentation and that sort of thing. Basically, you won't have to worry about going through all your individual views and checking them, checking all of your layouts and that sort of thing. You can just run a simple update and make sure that everything is in sync. So what it actually does specifically is that it brings your keynotes inside of ArchiCAD. So if you are currently doing keynoting in ArchiCAD and you're not doing it using our tool, you're probably copying and pasting the text of your notes from some other place, maybe a big Word doc that you have in your project, maybe somewhere online, or a database of some sort. You're probably copying and pasting them into ArchiCAD. Maybe you're writing them directly in the text tool in ArchiCAD. Regardless of how you are doing it like that, you're probably getting the actual information from outside of ArchiCAD. And so the problem with that is that as soon as you try to edit a note that you have placed, you have to remember all of the spots that you have it placed. And if you ever try to, say, schedule more information about your notes or anything like that, it becomes a manual process that you have to remember to do and remember to keep up to date, and that's where the Keynotes tool comes in. So I'm just going to open up the palette for the Keynotes tool here, and I'm just going to keep this floating here for the rest of the stream. And when you're working on Keynotes, you'll probably have this open all the time because this will help you work with them. So the main thing that we're going to do first is actually get a notes database into my project, because as you can see it's looking pretty blank right now. There's a number of different ways that we can do that. You can see in this panel of buttons on the side here, this is how we'll be doing most of what we're going to do with the tool. The top one here is to create a new note, and if I hit that button, it's just going to create a brand new keynote for us. So we can have a look at what a keynote is. So you can see it's displayed in the list here, and then because we have it selected, we have more information down here. So we've got a key, that's the generally a number, and that's a sort of a unique identifier for this note. Quite often these will be numerically sorted. Maybe you'll put in dots between divisions or categories or something like that. So for instance, this one is 0. If I create a new note, even though we don't have any different title, that's fine because the key is different. So we have 2 different keys. So as you add new notes, doing them this way, they'll just increment the number as you go. And once we do things like folders and that sort of thing, you'll see how that works as well. So that's one of the way that you can get your notes in, is that you can come in here, you can say, okay, I've got a new note. This one is called whatever it is that you want to make a note about. So this is the title. This is the thing that generally, if you are showing sort of a medium amount of information in your floor plan or section views or something, this is generally what you'll see there, is you'll see the key in the title. And then we've also got this bigger, much bigger description field, which will let you add a lot more data to the note. So this could be a full paragraph explaining all of the detail about a certain type of nail that you're including a note for or something like that. You'll see all that information here. And then we also have a final field called the spec ref, short for the specification reference. If you have something that needs to go in here to, say, refer to some other spec, this is where you'll put that part as well. So that's the 4 main parts of a note. So that's creating them manually. One of the other things I can do is I can import notes. So to do that, oops, jumped the gun there. I'm going to open up my Keynote Manager using this button here. And this will allow me to make changes to my database. So you can see I've got a series of buttons down the side here. I can use the new button to create new notes, similarly to how I did in the palette. But I also have these link, import, and export options here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import. And if you have the CI tools installed, as part of your installation, there'll be a folder called CI Tools Extras in your ArchiCAD folder, and in there is a CI Tools Keynotes file there. And this is an example database that we include with the tool so that you can sort of get an idea of what you can do with the tool, and maybe could be a starting point for your own database. So I'm going to select that one. I'll hit open and I get a bit of a preview of what we're going to bring in. I'll hit OK on that, and then hit OK to close my Keynotes Manager. And you can see now, in addition to my 2 new notes that I created before, we now have a series of folders imported here. These folders are arranged in a way that you might be familiar with your file system, in that you have files and folders, and inside the folders are files. The way that Keynotes refers to these internally is that the higher level items are called categories, and the lower level ones are the actual notes themselves. So you can see if I select site, it's named site for the category name, and it has the key number 2. Categories still have key numbers on them, but we don't have any description for this because we're not going to use it as an actual note. It's just a folder for us to put other notes into. And then if we go down one level, you can see some of the actual notes that I have in here. And you can see I have slightly different numbering systems set up here. So we've got the 2, which corresponds to the category they're part of, and then 0101, 0202, 0301, etc. So you can build multiple levels of folders in here as well, if that makes sense, or if that's how your existing data already is. You can go ahead and do that as well to reproduce the sort of a system that you already use. Now that we have some keynotes in our actual project, all we need to do is go through and start placing some of them. So the way you do that is you select the note that you want from the list here. Let's go with retaining walls, double click on it. You'll see that my toolbox in ArchiCAD will change to be the label tool because we're about to place a keynote label. And now I can just click to place my keynote label. So I'll place one here. And you can see that the label has placed down, and it is showing the note that I double clicked to select in my toolbox here. So you can go through, in my palette here, you can go through and add notes wherever you want to in your project, just using this system. So we can go through here and choose 20501, point over here, we get that note. We can also add multiple notes to a single label. So if we go to retaining walls here, and we decide that this one also needs to have 20601 services in it, we can just double click on that with this label selected, and it will add that note into it as well, and it'll just stack those up as many as you want. And now, since we have the label selected, you'll see we have this further panel right down at the bottom here called label content, and that shows us what we're actually looking at in the label we have selected. So this box is about the note we have selected up here, and this box here is about the label we have selected. So if I change to this one here, you'll see the top part doesn't change at all. We're still looking at 20601 services, but the bottom part shows the label content of the label I have selected. So we've got demolish existing building, and we can do the same with this one. If we double click on any of these extra notes, it will add them in. So we can go through and add as many of those as we need to. All right, I'm just going to take a quick pause there to check for any questions, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, looks like we don't have any questions, so let's keep getting on with this. So now that we have some labels placed in our project, obviously you'll have more than this and they'll be pointing to things that make sense, but we've got 2 labels here. The next thing I want to do is I want to create a schedule of these labels, because as you could see with some of these notes, retaining wall, for instance, we have this large amount of extra information that we want to have. It's associated with the note that we placed, but we don't necessarily always want to see it here. So what we're going to do to start with is just to tidy up my floor plan view. I'm going to make these notes even smaller than they already are. So I'll select the label. I'll come in here and I'll just turn off the title display. So all we're showing is a nice small note that shows just our key, because we're going to get all of our extra information from the schedule that we're about to create. So you can have nice compact notes using this, and you can make them whatever size and shape you want. And now if we go to our layout, we can create a schedule of this. So if I go to this view here, you can see my labels showing on this layout here. What I'm going to do is I'll just go to my CI Tools menu, choose Keynotes, and then choose the Create Schedule button. It gives me a whole bunch of different settings about how I want to create the schedule. We'll ignore most of these for now. All I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to schedule the current layout. I want to include only the notes that are visible on this layout in my schedule, and I will leave the default schedule settings selected, and I'll just hit OK. It'll pause for maybe half a second, and then you'll see the schedule appear. So this has gone through and it's found all of the notes that it can see on this project. So we had 2 labels with 2 notes each, so you can see those 4 notes here. They're broken up by category, so you can see the category or the folder here, to site, and then for enclosure, and then the notes that are part of each category are listed after them. So you can see the note ID, the note title, and the note description all listed there. So you can get all of that data that you have loaded up there, but still have very minimal display of the actual notes on your layout. So that's creating a Keynote schedule. Now the next thing that you inevitably will want to do while you're working with notes is you're going to want to modify some of the notes. So for instance, let's go over here, and we've got 20101 and 20601 selected. Let's a short way to get to the note that you want to is if you click on it in the label content here, it will zoom to it at the top. So we've got 20601 services here. So in this case, let's make some changes. So we're going to say that this one here is note RE demolition, and we'll fix this up by putting a capital B on that. There we go, and our note has been updated now. So all we do is we make changes on the in this palette here, and it makes those changes directly. You won't see any changes here because obviously we're just showing the key itself, so we don't see that data. However, if we go back in here and turn on the titles, we'll be able to see what's going on there. And when I do that, you'll see that it still says services. So this is the first part of the sync process, and that is keeping all of the labels in your project in sync with your database. So we've made changes to our database. What we want to do now is we want to make sure that all of our labels are up to date. So we just click this auditor button here, which is the it's kind of a list with a tick box next to it. We click on that, and it's going to show us what is happening with the status of our labels. And you can see that at the moment, note 20601 on the floor plan view, which is what we're looking at the moment, has a change associated with it. So what we can do at this point is we can just, if we don't have anything selected, we can just press the repair button, and it will go through and it will repair every single note in the project. So in this case, all of those changes will update immediately. If you want to interrogate any of them to see what's going on, maybe you see some changes in here that you don't expect or something like that, you can select the element that you are worried about and press the zoom to button, and it will find the label that it says there is a change for, and then zoom to it so you can see what's going on, so if you can figure out if it is a change that you wanted or not. So what I'm going to do is I'll just zoom back out. We've only got one change anyway, but I'll hit the repair button to update the entire project. We get this little warning about the hide with associated elements setting, which is fine. And you can see that immediately in the background my label has updated to show that change there. So using this audit tool, essentially what you'll do is anytime you make changes to any of your notes, obviously you don't need to do it after every edit. You can do a bunch of edits in the database using the palette here, and then just hit the audit button and then hit repair, and it will go through and just fix your entire project for you. You can see at the top we also have some filtering here, so if you wanted to, we're showing all keynotes in the current drawing. You can come in here and say entire project and just refresh that, and it will search every view that's available in your project. Sorry, not every view, everything, every element in the project notes, even if they're not visible in a view somewhere. It will search every element that you have placed, and there's various other selections you can make here. So you could check on just your sections or something like that, but the entire project will just do everything, which is in most cases is what you want. So we can see here we've got a bunch of notes placed, but we don't have any changes or anything. If there are changes or deletions or anything like that, the text displaying that thing will be in a different color. As you saw before, the change was orange, so you can easily spot if there's anything that you need to pay attention to in this. But the easy way to just have the peace of mind of knowing that everything is up to date is just open up the auditor, hit the repair button, and whether it needs to or not, it will go through and just make sure everything is up to date, and then you can close the auditor. So that's the first part of keeping things in sync, is making sure that all of our placed labels are in sync with our database. The second stage is doing the same but with our schedules. So if I go back over to my my layout here, you can see that it's updated because I changed the display of those. But in my schedule, we still have 20601 is showing the old data, and we can do exactly the same thing here. So whether or not it's updated, we can just run an update to make sure that it's all in sync. So we just go to CI Tools, Keynotes, choose Update Schedules. In this case, I'm just going to update the current layout, but when you are wanting to do this sort of for real, you can go through and do all layouts. We could do that actually because I only have one schedule placed, but we hit OK, and it will just look through the entire project for any schedules that are anywhere, and it'll update them all. I only have this one, so it only took a very small amount of time. You can see it now says Note RE Demolition, and we've got our capital B showing now, so it's all up to date now. But yes, if you have a whole series of layouts, a large amount of layouts in your project, and they all have schedules on them, this will take a little bit of time to do. So, you know, it might take half a minute or a few minutes or something, depending on how many layouts you have which have schedules on them. So this might be a sort of you hit the button to update and then go have some coffee or something. But in most cases, it will only take a few seconds. So that is the sort of the update two-step, I guess, is whenever you are working with editing your notes, you want to run a quick audit. Once you are done, hit the repair button, and we've done our repair. Then jump over to a layout view and run a update of our schedules. From this command here, we'll do all layouts again. It will go through and update all of our schedules. And at this point, once we've done those two updates, we know that everything in the entire project is in sync with the database. So you don't have to go and recheck any views yourself or anything like that. It's just done all of it for you. You don't have to remember where you placed everything and that sort of thing. So that's the sort of main big advantage of using Keynotes. Because all of this data is inside your ArchiCAD project, you can easily run an update like that to check that everything is in sync. All right, I'm just going to pause again very briefly to check for questions, and then we'll come back and we will look at some attribute notes, which is another way of doing Keynotes. All right, no questions for now. So yes, the next thing we'll look at is attribute notes. So the way that I've placed notes already is that I've selected notes from my palette here, and I've added the labels to the floor plan view here. What we're going to do next is we're going to create some attribute notes, which will mean that the actual geometry of the model elements in my project will know what notes they have attached to them. So for instance, this wall here, at the moment we're using this composite called Ext Stud 90 PB. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my manager again, and you may have noticed this before, but there's a second tab called Attribute Notes. We're going to open that one up, and then on the right you'll be able to see there's a list of attributes. So I'll come in here and I'll say composites. I'll find the composite that I happen to be using here, Ext Stud 90 PB. Looks good. And then I'll choose a note to attach to it. So let's find something vaguely related. Not really anything related, I'll just grab one of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the note that I want to associate with that composite, and I'll press the attach button. So that's gone ahead and done that. While we're here, I'll also go through and attach something to my building materials. So I think this one has wood in it. Timber wall, let's try that one. And we'll go through and find something that matches that. No, we won't. We'll just add something else. Structural glazing, why not? So I've added these attributes now. So those attributes now have keynotes associated with them. So what I can do now is I can go through and select any element in the project, and if they have those attributes, they will know that they have those notes inherently associated with them. So I can select this wall here, for instance, or rather that beam. Sorry, select the wall. There we go. And all I need to do to label this wall now, rather than going and finding the note that I want, is just go to my CI Tools menu, choose Keynotes, and then press the Label Attributes button, and it will automatically label itself. That dimensions are in the way a little bit there, but you can see it's automatically associated those two notes that I attached to the attributes with this wall. So the wall knows that it has those notes attached. So this is a really great way of doing your keynoting with as minimum work as possible, is that you can set up your project or your Office template to have a bunch of these attribute associations, and then whenever you select any of your elements and choose the label attributes option, it will just automatically add the right notes to those, which can be a real time saver once you have it set up. It does require a little bit of work at the beginning, obviously, because you need to set it up to do this, but if you have this built into your ArchiCAD template, every project you do from then on, everything will already know what notes needs to be attached, so you don't really need to do anything with them. The other thing you might have noticed about attribute notes is that obviously I selected my wall and chose to label it, and it did that immediately. But another thing that we can do is if we select another one of these walls here, I think it's the same composite, you'll be able to see under label content. So normally the label content field will show us what the selected label is showing. But what we can do is we can select the element, and you'll see the label content shows us these grayed out keynotes here, and you can see by the little icon next to them where they came from. So PC panel is coming from the composite, it's got an icon of a composite there, and structural glazing is coming from the building material because it has that icon of a building material there. So we can see what it already knows about itself, and then rather than using the menu, instead we can say, well, I want to display these notes, so I'll select one of them and just hit this little eyeball icon, and it will automatically label itself as well. So you can see it's placed a label sitting there. Not an ideal position, so let's move that out a little bit. And then with the wall selected again, still you can see that that one is dark now to show that that one's visible at the moment, and this one's still hidden. So we can select that one as well and display that, and that will add that label as well. So you can label them all in this way also. And if you want to re-hide any of those, you can do that as well. So if we change our mind about showing PC panel, we can just hit the eyeball again to change that. So that can just be a really nice, easy way of getting notes onto your project corresponding to the correct attributes that they belong to without having to actually go through and choose all of that stuff yourself. So that has been an introduction to the Keynotes tool. Thanks for coming, everyone. I'll just do a quick last minute check for questions. Cool. So thanks for coming. Next week we will look at Keynotes in a bit more depth. So we'll look at some of those different schedule options that we had available there. We will also look at linking a notes database, and we'll look at using label styles as well, so that you can control the way that your labels look and easily apply different styles to them depending on how you want the labels to look in the various views that you have them placed in. So that's what we'll be looking at next week. But again, if you have any questions, send those through to our support desk, nz.support@centralinnovation.com. Just email them through there if you have any questions, or if you have any suggestions for future webinar topics, send those through there as well, and they will make their way to me to cover in a future webinar. But thanks for your time, everyone, and I will finish up there. Bye.